Hello, my lovelies. This is Paisley Wild, and you're listening to The Spaces Between. Um, I am trying the whole going live on YouTube tonight, so I sure hope y'all are hearing me. So, for those in the TFR chat, or if you're in the YouTube chat, just give me a shout out if you can hear me or not, because you know what? I can't hear me, so it's all good. I don't need to hear myself, right? I guess. Um, we are being broadcast live on TFR, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, TalkStream Live, and if you, like I said, if you're listening and seeing me live on YouTube and that's working, give me a thumbs up. Say you like it. Yay! Thanks, Aussie. And yeah, if you're in TFR, by all means, go ahead and subscribe on YouTube. And I will, anytime I'm adding new content, you'll get a hello there too. So thanks, many musings. I see you in both places. And also, we will be putting this onto podcast later, of course, because sure, why not? You can hear me everywhere now. So yes, thank you for stopping by and saying hello. And I want to thank you all for joining me here on my spiritual journey. And I hope you keep coming back because this has been fun. I think this is episode number 15. So that means what, 3 months, 3.5 months? So cannot believe time is flying that fast. Oh my gosh. If you do want to support the show in a different fashion, I do have an Etsy store. It's www.etsy.com/shop/Monarch Mountain Studio. And Mountain is MTN. So, well, at least someone's hearing me somewhere. If you're hearing me on TFR, you can absolutely call in live at 213-233-3998. Or if you're in the UK, give me a call at 44203-393-2871. And if I've got it right and you call in, we'll hear you on YouTube too. So, boop, boop. And last week we had kind of been talking about ley lines and such, and some of those energy nexuses or vortices that, are just all around the world. And, sorry, folks, I got to find out where I was again. That's what I get for not leaving myself the right kind of notes. And, some of those nodes where those lines are crossing, there's a lot of, ancient, monument type buildings that are on these ley lines or at the nexus points. And they're just, it's been hypothesized that the different ley lines are actually sending communication waves from one point to another. And that's why so many different civilizations have so many different similar structures or carvings or even in some places, their writing and the pictograms that they use, the hieroglyphs, that kind of thing, are very, very similar in structure and in creation. So there's definitely some similarities. So either these ancient cultures were traveling across the oceans and land masses to, share knowledge and such, which is possible, or aliens, or the information is traveling around the world using the ley lines. I personally feel that the ley lines is probably pretty accurate. Who knows? Aliens could happen. I'm not against them. I believe it is very, very 100% possible. Without a doubt. But before we get into that, I want to talk about tomorrow night's show. I'm going to talk about Lammas. And it's the upcoming or the next holiday for in the pagan calendar. And I'm going to talk a bit about how to, practice and observe the holiday without everybody knowing that you're observing a pagan holiday or pagan tradition. Because a lot of folks are still in the pagan pantry, and they don't really want their families to know, or are not comfortable with their families knowing that they are pagan and not following a Christian path. And I think that's important. If we have time tonight, I'll absolutely start. And some of the things are kind of, simplified a little bit, or I will talk about simplifying them, so that if you have littles, that you can incorporate them into your practice in your celebration, because there is a lot of things around the pagan path and witchcraft in general that are really more PG-13. And if it's not going to be PG-13, how are you going to let your 5-year-old practice or learn more about the holidays and such? Hi, Black Tree. And so just there's a bunch of different things that we're going to talk about and try to go over those a little bit. Sorry, just trying to keep track of my mind. It's not working tonight. I got 11 hours of sleep last night, which was awesome. Made me a little late for work. And then I had a quad shot of white coffee and with a lot of chocolate. And it was I don't know what my connection is. I'm getting a yellow error, Black Tree. So I have a feeling it's a network issue. My internet here in Dawn's command center isn't all that great for, I think, broadcasting. I need to go buy some line and hard line the computer in. I think it'll just be much better, and I think our upload will be better even. So cool. Otherwise, I guess you're just gonna max headroom me there on YouTube. So sorry, guys. I'll try to not move around so much. It's hard for me. I talk with my hands. Good times. Just real quickly, because I know a lot of folks that listen occasionally are from different time zones. So shout out to y'all. And I just want to mention that when you are in the pagan pantry or the broom closet, there are a couple different ways that you can have your practice be visible to yourself, absolutely, and also to others, without it looking like you really do have a practice. Thanks, Renee. I just forgot to brush it, seriously. So it's, for instance, if you worship or follow Gaia, for instance, and you have several plants, or maybe a patio garden, or that kind of thing, that could actually be a part of your altar. You having the plants there. You can get the glass globes that are on kind of a stem, and use those for water. So fill them up with water, leave them in the windowsill overnight. Suddenly they have moon water, especially during the full moon. Flip them upside down and stick them in your plant. It looks like you're just watering your plant, but you're actually giving it moon water. So that's absolutely a non-obvious way that you're celebrating your faith in your practice. And most people aren't going to recognize that. And a lot of those water globes are very decorative and just really super pretty. And there really aren't obvious, I guess, if you will, that they could be pagan. So just one way. Collecting rocks, you can leave those in your plants as well. Some people put little figurines or statues. I know several people who have little bitty Buddhas, for instance, that they have all over their house, or they think they're cool, or troll dolls, or whatever. Any of those little figurines that you might pick up. An elephant or a lion, something that might be your totem. And have or a spirit animal representation, have that in your potted plant as well. So it's just a way to not be obviously pagan, but still having your faith represented out there in wherever you're at. So, and that works for in the office or at home, either way. Yes, palm trees, black tree, that would be great. That would be grand. So last week, just to pick up where we left off, we had been talking about ancient tracks that had followed ley lines in, I think, New Mexico is where we were at, through Chaco Canyon. And down in Bolivia, those paths are parallel to one another. Some lead to nowhere. Some go to or also known as the Anasazi roads, in the Pueblo Alto area. Now, the German equivalent of ley lines is the Heilige Linen, or the Holy Lines. I'm maybe German, but I do not speak German at all. It's horrible, and I'll muck it up. I'm sorry. Anyways, they're in the area known as the German Heartland, and there's a significant network of those lines, which include the Exerstein and the megalithic stone circle at Bad Meinberg. So the stone circles, they are all over the world, not just at Stonehenge. There's several henges, and often those are right on ley lines or at nexus points where two lines cross, where there's a greater amount of energy flowing. Now, there has been some suggestions that there's enough prehistoric sites to play just a kind of dot to dot statistically with the various different spots and other things, and it just looks pretty random. But it could be that there were more ley lines, in ancient times or prehistoric times, and just as the Earth has aged, those lines have condensed into stronger rivers of energy, for instance. So I have many musings, and it's some of it's folklore. You really do have to pay attention to it. Because it will give you some significant cues as to where those ley lines may have been once upon a year, or maybe they've traveled, or maybe they aren't where they used to be, because the Earth has changed. Now, there is a lot of debate about when ley lines first came about or how they were made, and so there is some ley lines that were connected offshore beneath the English Channel, and scientists with the last name of Berend decided or deduced that those particular ley lines were formed somewhere between 7,000 and 6,000 BC. So that's been quite a long time ago. And so since then, of course, the Earth has changed. The planet has shifted. The Earth or the continents have shifted. I mean, we're still having earthquakes even now down in California and on the West Coast. As the crust shifts and moves, some of those channels have moved, of course. So there's a fair number of the great cathedrals and churches that were built actually over pre-existing pagan sites and constructions. And use of those ancient sites can be seen to, if you dig down deep enough, you can see the remains of some of those sites clear back to the prehistoric times, like the menhirs or the capstones, or for the passage mounds in the Karnak region. And a lot of the same megalithic structures are found invariably to be at ley points along those lines, very much connected with the prehistoric path. Now, not all of the megalithic stones, of course, were on ley lines. Some just had a different spiritual significance. Perhaps that's where a connection with the Fae was, or a portal to a different dimension. So a lot of the ley lines and the Roman roads actually were parallel or used or at the same time or overlaid. So the pathways in those roads actually crossed the ley points or ley lines. And so it makes you wonder, did ancient peoples actually follow the ley lines as a path themselves, and then as society aged and different cultures took over, were roads then built on those same lines? It's possible. Don't know. I would love to find out, do more research, or go back in time and see. Because for me, I think that ancient history is just fascinating. Now, the Etruscans had standing stones in different linear patterns, of course, through Tuscany, and so the Romans, of course, recorded the straight tracks in almost every country that they subjugated because they liked to write everything down. So that was through Europe, North Africa, Crete, ancient Babylon, etc. But of course, those histories that were written down are definitely skewed by the viewpoint of the victor. So, regardless of how developed the cultures were at that point, Rome, just for political purposes, often decreased the significance or the value or the importance of that information. So, there's a William Stuckley, he was a doctor, in 1740. He first noted that the axis of Stonehenge and the avenue leading from it point directly to the northeast, which is about where the sun rises and the days are longest. And so it's a quote. He perceived that the whole British landscape was laid out according to a sacred druidic pattern and then etched with symbols of serpents and winged discs. A barrow near Hull, he found another earthwork that represented the winged circle, with its trenches arranged to measure the seasonal tides of the Humber estuary, and he disclosed another near Navestock Common in Essex, which now lies forgotten in a small wood. So he kept writing, and for him, in his research, he found that a lot of the different points with Stonehenge directly, those lines radiated throughout the countryside, and that those lines lead to other valuable. Well, thanks, Aussie. Other valuable or highly important historical sites, and then there's Xavier Gouchard in 1911. He was a French philologist, and he started researching the origins of different European place names. How did those names come about? And he decided that there's three basic root names of Burgess, Antium, and Alesia, of which the Alesia had never been given to a town or a village in prehistoric times. But in its Greek form of Eleusis, that does come from pre-Homeric, and so it's an Indo-European. And so those names were connected to other places, not directly related to or in Europe. So where did that information come from? It had to have come from somewhere else. And there's a bunch more information here that I'm not going to go over. Holy cow. Man, when I research, I find dates and times, and as much as I love all that information, it'll just bore your eyes out. I'm sorry, guys. Maybe I'll put something on Facebook later. But during or after the war, 1914-1918 World War, a Major F.A. Menzies, he was a British Army engineer and surveyor, and he decided to investigate some of the energies of the Earth and the radii and radiesthesia, and while in France, he did a bunch of other studying, and basically he became more aware of feng shui and geomancy. And he was able to see examples of Chinese geomancers and their compasses in the various museums in Paris. And so he, of course, had to modify one for his own use because they're cool. And by learning how to do it, he figured out that there are different energy alignments that even the Chinese were using. So there's negative energy feng shui if you're trying to fix your energy in your residence, for instance. You need to pay attention to that negative energy. But anyways, he went on to figure out that quite a few of the different astronomical, can't talk now, too much coffee earlier, astronomical alignments that were associated with a solar or fire worship in pagan times were connected directly to the ley lines and the different where they were put. And so there's some ley lines actually show or reflect the different constellations as well. So there some study and some some experts feel that the ley lines mirror the night sky, even so they're drawing the universe energy down to the earth, in addition to spreading that energy throughout the planet. Um, so let's see. A lot of the ley lines just definitely run between the different points, the nexus, of course, to spread that information. I keep saying that because I think it's important, because there are so many cultures on all the different continents that have repeated the same information. So yes, you could say it's aliens. Not saying it's not. Just a minute. Dawn's studio is quite warm, and it needed a window open desperately, or a fan. But anyways, so that information from those different cultures had to have come from somewhere. Whether it was, just individual studying and figuring things out, and then great minds think alike, or did aliens come, or someone, or the gods come down? Personally, I think it was the gods. Could they be the aliens? Possibly, but the gods came down, gave that information to the different cultures, and then that information then spread throughout the countryside using the ley lines, because it's just a great channel or avenue for that information to flow from one point to the next and to spread across the world. So let's see here. What else do I have? So I've got some examples of different ley lines and such. Because there's the dragon lines in China. So there's the Belgian ley lines is the Varus or Waris alignment. So it stretches across the Belgian landscape and includes at least 6 megaliths along the route. So as of yet, there has not been an exact astronomical or stars that line up exactly, but there's still some thoughts that there's something there. In France, there's the Mont Saint-Michel ley line. So the main church at Mont Saint-Michel is oriented at the 26 degrees north of true east, which is the same as Notre Dame, actually. And then that particular orientation extends to form an alignment with Mont Dol to the southwest, d'Avranches to the northeast, and Mount Dol is the place where Saint Michel is said to have fought Lucifer, for instance. So, yes, Nazca lines, absolutely. We talked about them last week, but yes, there's some thought that not just are they, just really huge and awesome, but yeah, they do gather energy possibly from the solar system and the universe around us and draw it down to the earth and to the peoples. And it may be and channeling it around to the world around them. Now Mount Carmel in Israel, through Delos, which is dedicated to Apollo, Delphi, Corfu, which is the island of Artemis, which is the sister of Apollo, Le Mont Gargano in Italy, which was a European sanctuary of the Archangel, La Sacra di San Michele in Piedmont, which is a Benedictine monastery, and there's a couple of other names I'm going to just horribly mess up, all the way down to an island in southeast of Ireland. Those are all in the same energy lines. So, last week I mentioned that straight lines don't just randomly appear in nature. Generally, they are man-made or caused to happen. There are some instances where crystals or rock formations do happen in straight lines just because that's the way the crystals grow, or the rocks grew during an eruption or some such. But for the most part, straight lines are not natural. They have been created by some force, whether it's man-made or God-made or alien-made. Doesn't matter. they were created and formed. And holy cow. So we are just about down to the bottom of the hour. I think we're going to be going to break here in just a moment. And Dawn's not here to show me how to do this, so hopefully it'll just take over naturally. Check the call board, and nope, no one's called in. So if you do want to call in, please do. By all means. I'd love to talk to y'all. So the call lines are open. It's 213-233-3998, or if you're in the UK, 44203-393-2871. So thank you guys, and it looks like we will be right back. And if you're on YouTube, I'm gonna just, there's a video that's gonna play. So yeah, I think I do this right. Hello, my lovelies. This is Paisley Wild, and you are listening to me here at the Spaces Between. So, thank you for joining me tonight. And just to remind y'all, the call line is open. It's 213-233-3998. And if you want to support me in a different fashion, you can go to my my Etsy store. It's www.etsy.com/shop/Monarch Mountain Studio. I don't know, is that something I can paste into YouTube? Maybe? Did that show up, guys? If it showed up, awesome. Boop boop. Haha. Cut and paste, love it. There we go. And yeah, it's boop boop. Just doing fun, having fun. There is I do somewheres, I don't know where it's at, have the PayPal link if you want to support me with PayPal. I think it's on the main channel page, which if you want to do that, that's awesome. Or if you're listening to the podcast, you can do some promoting there or hit a button and you can donate to me that way too. So yay. I love that y'all are here. And yes, holy cow, Black Tree, I gotta tell you, you are just an awesome mod. You're probably gonna get promoted from just observer to mod, just to warn you. So you're gonna get wrenched. Because I know Don's got other things he has to do often. So yeah, it's fun. It's good. So we were talking about ley lines and different correspondences. So the line that we were talking about that goes through Ireland is just generally associated with St. Michael. A lot of the different structures and towns and communities along that particular line have some form of Michael as their name, whether it's Michael or Michel or Michelle, or etc. Now, in Portugal, it's called the Evora alignment, and so they're along or aligned in the direction of the spring full moon, and it starts near Evora, at the Cromolac dos Almendres. Okay, if you guys speak any of these languages, I am so sorry that I am tearing up these names. Phonetics. Hey, good night, Brent. Thanks for stopping by and saying hi. Appreciate it. Anyways, I'm sorry if I'm just don't speak foreign languages very well. Working on it though, I promise. So anyways, the Evora alignment, it starts Cromolac dos Almendres, so it's one of Europe's actually oldest stone circles or henges, and it's was constructed directly under the moon maximum at the southerly latitude, where Stonehenge was built under the most northerly setting for the spring equinox and full moon. So, and then about 3 miles further along is the Anta Grande do, Zambujeiro, or a passage mount. So, and it's the largest of all of its kind in Iberia, and it's just a beautiful example of an astronomical or lunar alignment, and it terminates at the original location of Cromolac da Zeres, which is a stone quadrangle instead of a traditional henge or circle. So it's just kind of I don't know, it's fascinating. I would love to go see some of these and experience some more of these different ley lines. I think it'd be just fascinating to go through Europe and see all these energy points. In Maltese, so the island of Gozo is home to the third largest dome in the Christian world, and it was built actually over a huge dolmen. So it's a Christian structure over a prehistoric pagan structure, and it's the only large megalithic construction on the island, and it's known as the Giantihia Temple Complex. So you can see Malta through a notch in the hills, and it's just got it's called the Zagra stone circle, which was constructed over a hypogeum, which was the resting place for several hundred different bodies. So it's a kind of a mass funeral site, and the dolmen were there to kind of memorialize that particular space, and then the Zra Cathedral and complex were kind of built all in alignment across the island. So there's a very interesting geomorphic quality about all the different structures and the energy and spiritual significance for the not just the pre-Christian but also the Christian structures. And then in England, there's quite a few different ley lines, and then there's one called Dragon Hill, which I thought was just interesting. It's along St. Michael's Ley Line, over by Uffington. And then, let's see. I don't know. There's just, depending on the type of energy that is associated with the different the ley lines. Some of them are very positive, some are very negative. We talked about black lines last week. The dragon lines, the devil's arrows. There's the energy associated is often given different names to interpret the different types of energy that were associated with those particular spaces. And so that energy then, impacts your rituals and your craft and just every part of your practice as a pagan, and is often where there's a greater connection with either the gods or the goddesses, your spirit guides, or any of the contemporary mythical types of creatures. Now, they're mythical, I think, today mostly because they're not known. I mean, even the pandas, I think I've mentioned this before, were once considered a figment of someone's imagination and not real, right up until pandas were presented as this fat tub of fluff that was pretty not active. And how'd you miss that? Green place, black and white bear, I don't know. Anyways, just because mankind hasn't seen something or experienced something in recent memory or recent history doesn't mean it's not out there. Just like if you're doing your rituals or practicing your craft or communicating with your deities or participating in a ritual, often that energy that you're experiencing is going to be greater, and you're going to feel it. I mean, whether or not you're tapping into the energies of a ley line. And there's quite a few of those ley lines that are not just the big ones that everybody knows about, but I feel there's a lot more that are not as big, kind of like capillaries, if you will, that spread that same energy throughout the world. So, sure, like, for instance, the Columbia River Basin, it's a pretty big river, but that water all had to come from somewhere. So I feel that the ley lines are very similar in going upstream. You find all the tributaries and the waterways and such. And so I personally believe that a lot of riverbeds or creek beds do follow some form of ley line. And I think that's why so many different wells and such had different energies to them. I think some of the ancient wells actually, because there was a water sprite or a water god of some sort associated with that particular well, their offerings were given, and so they actually became a little bit more sentient. And so, as a result, there's more energy there. It became more of an energy nexus that people created, and I think that's part of the way we honor the natural world around us, not just the energy that we have within, but honoring the energy with the life around us, whether it's the trees or the mountains or the lakes or the animals or any of that. You honor it, and you hold it sacred and in reverence. Now I say that even with the animals, because as someone who hunts and fishes, and I'm a farm kid, so I have chickens that end up in the stew pot periodically. Not lately, but periodically. And I think if you have respect for that life, and you think it, that life form, during when you're butcher time or whatever. I think that's important. Now I know a lot of folks who are pagan are very vegan or vegetarian, and that's their way of honoring that path and that energy from and or the sentience, I suppose, that's associated with animals. And I get it. I understand. I just don't follow that particular path because I like bacon and sausage. Sorry, guys. And I don't like pigs as much. So, I like my chickens more. So honor the life around you and the world around you. It's not that hard. I think we've gotten away from that as a society, to be honest, because we just don't honor that energy, that love of each other that we used to have, or in that connectivity. I think, and I don't know why, because in losing that and not having that same connection and honoring it, I think that's why we're seeing so much negativity and anger and hatred in the world. So I am just speaking in general terms there, mostly because I don't watch the news anymore. I had to stop because it was just a negative energy suck, and I didn't want to feed that negative energy anymore. And so I stopped watching mainstream news because that seems like they focus a lot on the negativity, and I wanted to move on to something else. So if I want news, it's all over online, and I can kind of focus on what I want to read a little bit more instead of just whatever someone wants to throw at me. So I can focus on those happy stories. And I wish that we had more of that mainstream news. But that's just my opinion there. So yeah, as Black Tree says, if you are on YouTube, please make sure you hit the like, and if you want to share it, that's awesome. I appreciate it. And then I think I'll just finish off the show, which we've still got about 13 minutes. I'm talking more about, hiding in plain sight as a pagan or a witch. So, also, if you do want to call in, just to remind you, the phone line is open. It's 213-233-3998. Or if you are in the UK, it's 44203-393-2871. Oh, and you can always email me if you've got a show idea or if you've got a question or something you want me to address on the air. It's wildpaisley, it's WILDEPAISLEY @gmail.com. So, yeah, I like it that y'all are joining me one way or another. Oops, I moved the screen. So when we are trying to observe our practice and as pagans, and the people we live with are not pagans, or they might be judgmental. It's mostly, partly it's a fear, and I get it. It's a fear of not being accepted by our loved ones. There are parts of my family that don't know that I am a practicing pagan. Mostly because I don't want to deal with that particular drama. And it's not that they wouldn't accept me necessarily as I am, but I don't want to have to defend myself, I guess. And that's what it would come down to, is I'd have to defend this belief that I have as a pagan. I follow Hecate and Canunos. And I don't want to have to explain why. if I don't have to. I mean, it's one thing to explain to my daughter, who I'm trying to teach, something else entirely to have to explain to, a sibling or a extended relative. And it's just a battle that's not worth fighting to me. So I guess that's my first suggestion as someone who's in the broom closet is pick your battles. If you're not ready to be out and show your family that you are pagan, then don't. It's okay. You don't have to. You also don't have to hide in the closet either. You can come out anytime. It's your choice to do what you want to do. Whether it is to come out or stay in the closet as long as you need to. So, that being said, how do you honor your deities? How do you have a ritual? Well, some of that is just your morning routine. For instance, if you drink coffee, whether or not you Keurig or not, or cream or sugar or not. I mean, if you use a standard drip coffee pot, just like I do, because I drink too much of it, I can't afford the expensive coffee because I drink a lot of coffee. When you put the grounds in the filter basket, use your finger and draw a protection rune or something into the coffee grounds before you add the water. Set your intention. This cup of coffee is going to be, what kickstarts your day and helps you be as positive as possible. In many rituals and such, often the first sip or drink of a libation like wine or beer or meat or something is given to the earth to honor the earth, and it's just poured out of a vessel, a cup or something, or a bowl. So like here in North Idaho, tomorrow morning I am looking forward to enjoying my coffee out on my deck, and I will be giving some of my coffee to pour it out on the ground, not because I want to waste my coffee, but because I'm giving some of my drink to the earth, and I'm honoring the earth in that respect. So that's definitely something that you can do, and I recommend it. When you season your food as you're cooking, you can think of the different herbs that you're putting into your food and the different magical properties of those particular herbs. And if you're looking up new recipes, someone asks you, well, why are you looking at that, information there? Well, it's like you want to know more about it before you put it in your food. And is it going to work with something else? Because not all seasonings and spices work with all different dishes. I don't know that I would put mint on steak, for instance. Not something that really goes well together. But mint has some really great properties from the viewpoint of a pagan and your ritual. So just, pay attention to that. And I personally, I don't have a book of shadows. I have a recipe box. I'm a kitchen witch, so it makes sense for me to have a recipe box for my book of shadows. Now, will that at some point become more of a book? Yes, absolutely, because that's how I am. But not yet. I'm not there yet. And often I do have a notebook, for instance, that I do jot things down in if I'm creating new things. I'll be adding witch bottles to my Etsy page here probably this next week. And just some basics. And so I want to write down the different contents that I'm putting there, partly so I can explain what they are when I post them on the page, but also so that I can have some consistency and make them again and again, because we all need a little bit of protection. We all need a restful night's sleep, and we all need less stress. So it's not necessarily like witch bottles of old, which were there to bind you to the land or protect the land. It's more to protect self nowadays, because we don't have as much of a connection with the land as a whole, because farming isn't quite the same back-breaking chore it was 2,000 years ago, even 100 years ago. So as I figure out those different recipes and those spells for those witch jars, I'll be writing those down. Absolutely. I want to be able to just pull out the card and say, all right, well, I need 2 bay leaves and, a teaspoon of sage and a tablespoon of sea salt and some cascarilla powder. Whatever. You polish it off with some vinegar. I just threw that one out. I haven't actually researched it or say, yes, do that one. But it is a possibility. It's something you could definitely do. So, just as you're doing things, don't be afraid to write things down and have them in a journal of some sort. Yeah, you may need to have code it a little bit or do something to um, to keep it separate or to protect yourself from the people around you if they're not going to be as accepting of your practice. So just being aware. I see that Black Tree has asked a question in YouTube. She wants to know what a hedge witch is. So a hedge witch is generally defined. Now this is defined according to the Pagan Federation in Scotland. It identifies a hedge witch as someone who is solitary or highly individualistic, who might prefer a shady part of nature where they can foster their talents. They may have their own inner moral code of conduct, but they're generally very intellectual, and they study medicinal plants and use and understand the use of plants in various crafts, dyeing, food, drinks. So maybe I'm more of a hedge witch than a kitchen witch, I suppose. That's maybe a thing. In theory, at one point they used to know a rainstorm was coming just by smelling the air. Yeah, I do that now. So I can tell when it's going to rain or snow. But contemporary hedge witches may be drawn to, say, midwifery, for instance, or healing medicine of some sort, like your Reiki or your massage therapist, that type of thing. So just they're very, very in tune with the natural order of things. I hope that answered your question. Black Tree, you could have called in. Just saying. Call lines open. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. No, I'm kidding. Because we only got a couple minutes left. So, a hedge witch, just so you know, is more likely to set up their altar in a very simple way using natural resources like plants and herbs that they may actually have grown in their backyard. Probably don't have a wand. Probably don't have lots of ornaments and such. Just generally practical and simple. and so yeah, I guess I am more of a hedge witch than a kitchen witch, or a combination. So, but yeah, going back to being in the broom closet, it happens. Don't be afraid to incorporate the things around you as part of your practice, whether that's drawing runes in your food as you're preparing it. If you're stirring a sauce or something, don't be afraid to draw runes or glyphs into the sauce as you're cooking it to add a boost of energy. Just whatever you're doing, make sure you're setting your intention, because that's important, I think. And probably the biggest thing when you're doing any kind of ritual is make sure you understand what your intention is, what your goal is. What is it that you want to accomplish by doing whatever it is you're doing? So if your intention is to, make your family feel better during flu season and you're making a chicken soup, it doesn't matter if it's coming from a can of chicken soup or making it from scratch. It doesn't really matter. It's the intention that you're putting into it to help make your family feel better. So, that intention is huge, 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 huge. And I think probably, in my opinion, the cornerstone of your faith and your practice as a witch or as a pagan, when you're doing any form of ritual, is to set that intention so what you're doing actually turns out the way you want it to. So, tomorrow night, if you didn't get it last week, we are on every Friday and Saturday night now at 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Boop, boop. And I'm excited about that. Actually, it's a lot of fun. I'm excited I can be on 2 nights a week because I generally have a lot of information I try to go through in a really short amount of time, so I talk really fast, and I don't have to now. I feel like I can actually get my whole message out in 2 days, and there's not that same disconnect. So it's pretty doggone cool. So tomorrow night we're going to talk about llamas and celebrating it, and not just loud and proud as a pagan, but also how to practice. Also, if you're in the pagan pantry or still in the broom closet. So catch me tomorrow night, 9 p.m. here on TFR, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, TalkStream Live, etc. So thank you for joining me tonight. And yeah, me too, many musings. Thoughts or ideas, send me an email, give me a call, doesn't matter. And so merry meet and merry part and merry meet again.